Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting a like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. Well, let's crack on with today's first story, which comes from Paul, Man of Farts. Oh, what a username. Am I the arsehole for confirming my mother-in-law's suspicion that I didn't want her in the kitchen while I cooked? Apparently, I'm still in the doghouse for this, so I wanted an outside opinion. My mother-in-law is not a bad person, but she can be very difficult. My wife Sarah has learned to process these things with grace, which I appreciate. I'm still learning, but I will get there. I hope. One of the ways she's difficult is that she has some manipulative tendencies. A very common tactic for her is to fake whine that she's not welcome here. I guess I'll just go outside, with the obvious implication that we need to comfort her and tell her that she is welcome. I suspect she has some abandonment issues, but I am not a therapist. Again, my wife has learned to deal with this over a lifetime. It's just the way mum is, which is fine. I hate it and it is manipulative garbage, but I might do the same thing. My wife and I bought our first home last year, so we hosted Christmas. This is mother-in-law's first time being a guest instead of a host, so I knew we'd need to be patient with her. She's out of control of the situation. That's hard. Well, it was Christmas dinner cooking time. Our kitchen can be generously referred to as efficient, and I was cooking for 12 people while Sarah played host. My mother-in-law found every excuse to park herself in my way as I was trying to roast a goose and make 5 sides. I had to ask her several times to move just to find space to chop. Finally, this exchange, recalled exactly as I can, occurred. I said, "Hey mum, you can just go hang out in the living room with everyone else, I got this." She said, "Oh, I get it, I'm not welcome here." Imagine this in a fake drama tone. I said, "Well, yeah, but I figured it would be rude to say it like that." I think she was mad I didn't play along because the facade dropped instantly. She said fine and went back to the other group. I didn't think much of it until she told Sarah this week that she was still mad at me. Am I the arsehole? Now, we've seen a lot in these posts, but family, and like in this post, it's just the way mum is. And you said which is fine, and you hate it because it's manipulative garbage, which it absolutely is. If her family want to tolerate that sort of bullshit, that's absolutely up to them, but you don't have to put up with that. And to me, well done to you for calling it out as it is, and I would continue to do so. I'd get fed up pretty quickly if someone was moaning at me all the time that I'm not welcome here, clearly manipulating the situation. So, not the arsehole from me. Literally typing says, "Not the arsehole. She's not mad that you said that. She's mad because you took her superpower away. She'll get over it." Dino Snuggler says, "Not the arsehole. Her manipulation didn't work on you and she's big mad about it. Would stop playing along altogether. After all, that's just the way you are." OP says, "We come from pretty significant different cultures, so the communication is hard sometimes. Like I had to learn that when Sarah's family says, 'Are you sure that's a good idea?' it really means if you do that, we will excommunicate you from the family forever." Review OK says, "Not the arsehole. It's really difficult to have much sympathy for the mother-in-law in this situation. She is obviously used to getting the opposite reaction, even when she is being unreasonable. I have a mother-in-law like this, and it wasn't until I did something similar that everyone realized they didn't need to pussyfoot around her manipulative attempts anymore." OP says, "She has a lot of pretense in general, like she'll tell stories that go out of their way not to get to the point, just so she can be in charge of the conversation." Vexbox says, "My grandmother used to do things like this. One year on Christmas, in lull of the Christmas noise, she muttered her favorite, 'Oh, I wish I were dead.' No, she wasn't serious. This was a way of saying, 'I want attention.' I don't know what it was about that moment, but I burst out laughing. The obnoxious loud cackling of being caught off guard by something that hits right in that funny spot. This started my dad laughing, then mum, etc, etc. And my dad told her over our laughter, 'Wrong crowd, ma.' She didn't say it again, at least not when I was there. Sometimes you just gotta give him the reality check. Not the arsehole." And one more comment from Cheesy Pesto Pasta. Oh, yum. Says, "Not the arsehole. I've dealt with people who use this manipulation technique before. They know they're being manipulative and enabling them will make it worse. A simple response of, 'Your presence in my home was welcome. Your presence in my kitchen at the moment was inconvenient.' I'm sorry if you felt hurt, but I consider this matter closed, would be my next step. Then next time she pulls this "oh, I'm not welcome" bullshit, which she will, you say, "I'm not playing this game with you anymore. I need to get to the cupboard though, could you please go and sit down?" She will pull the hurt card again, but the process should repeat less and less frequently before she eventually realizes she's onto a loser with you. So OP updates the post and they say, "Okay, so this went really poorly, but somehow could have gone even worse. My mother-in-law is more of a piece of work than I thought." A couple of days after I posted that, I showed my wife the comments, warts and all. To her credit, she was apologetic, in that she knew her mum was in the wrong, but had gotten so used to the behaviour that she was hesitant to correct it. I said that we probably needed to rip the band-aid off if her mum was going to come back next year, and she agreed very reluctantly. I should note something about my wife's family. They don't really argue in the way that you or I understand it. They complain to each other's faces loudly, and then no one changes their mind, and it's all buried until it flares up again. This is something my wife and I have worked through very thoroughly over the course of many years, and it's probably why my mother-in-law's marriage recently fell apart. Anyway, so we get on a call with her and bring up her grievance, with me as a silent speakerphone partner, and she is still apoplectic about it, for reasons that I frankly don't understand at the time. She starts talking herself in wild circles about what she perceives happened, which was not particularly accurate, but I don't much care. I just want harmony next time she visits. And finally my wife says something to the effect of, "Mum, what are you actually upset about?" And finally we get to the actual crux. I'm really just disappointed that my son-in-law would speak to me like that. Wife responds, "Mum, it asked you to leave the kitchen several times and you wouldn't." She says, "I'm 70 years old and I know my way around the kitchen, and some respect for it would be nice." OP continues, "So that's what it was. You were all right. It was a stupid fucking power play about her being a guest instead of in charge." To my wife's eternal credit, she used the phrasing I recommended. "Mum, next time you are here, you need to respect the boundaries we set." Mother-in-law says fine and hangs up and ignores my wife for 3 weeks, but was all sunshine the next time they talked. Now, I know that I will need to meticulously set those boundaries with my words, and then enforce those boundaries if she breaks them. But honestly, I don't know what I expect going forward. It's at least nice to know what the actual problem was. Thanks to all who helped me see what was really going on. And it's one of those stories that you get to the end of it and you think, that's not the last we're going to hear of that mother-in-law. I'm pretty sure of it. All the stories we've covered in the past showing this kind of behavior always escalates again in some form or another, especially the way OP told us about how the family deals with arguments is such that they all just blow up at each other's faces. No one admits they're wrong. No one takes any responsibility. It just quietens down and it all gets brought up again some point in the future. Sounds like an awful way to live. Holy moly. I can only imagine the sort of resentment boiling up with each of them family members in the background. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to another story. And I found me a little bit of neighbor drama from Cactus Lover Forever, who says, "Would I be the arsehole for planting prickly bushes in my front yard to keep the neighbor's kids from my property?" Let's have an update as well. Throwaway for obvious reasons. You can tell how excited I get about neighborly shit. I moved into a detached townhouse a few months ago. It's a rental. I'm leasing it for a year with the option to extend that with a second year or possibly buy the house. My driveway is right next to the neighbors. It's big enough to fit 2 regular sized cars, and halfway down my driveway there's a path leading around my house. On side of the path is my house, on the other side about 3 meters of yard. That's mine. Ever since I moved in, I've been having issues with the neighbors using my driveway for parking, turning their cars, storing their other stuff, playing, etc, etc. Asking them to stop using it and keep their items on their own property has not worked, so I placed a few large plants, installed a camera and a no trespassing sign, and that helped a bit. At least the cars are gone. The last few weeks with the stay home advice, I've been working from home, but the neighbors' kids are making that really hard. They're about 5 and 7. Boys, and they keep ringing my doorbell multiple times a day, asking if they can play with my dog. If I want to play with them or anything else they can think of. I asked them to stop it so I can work, which of course didn't work. So I asked their parents and was told boys will be boys and they weren't going to do anything about it. To keep my sanity intact, I removed the battery from the doorbell, but now they keep running around in my front yard, on the path around my house, banging on my windows, banging on my doors, and actually tried to open the gate to my backyard this morning as they heard me in there. I once asked them to stop, told them I will not be allowing them to play with my dog anymore at all if they keep this up, and they left, sending over their dad. I told him to keep the boys away from my property and door. If not, I'll be planting some prickly bushes to teach them to stay away from other people's property and shut the door in his face. Would I be the arsehole if I actually did that? I'd love to place a fence or something, but as it may be a short-term rental, I have to be able to return everything in its original state for now. Edit. I'm getting a lot of comments about social distancing and lack of isolation of the boys. I'm from the EU. My country isn't on lockdown and it's, or was, I'm not 100% sure anymore, advised to let small children play outside. So you can tell the time period this story was happening. Now, obviously, this is going to be a not the arsehole in this situation, but can you imagine from the parent's point of view, letting your children just go knock on a random neighbor's door, a neighbor you don't know their history, don't know nothing about them. Obviously, I'm not against OP at all in this situation, but in reality, they know nothing about this neighbor and they're just letting their kids knock on their door. That's wild. And even if they did know them, it's still absolutely wild to allow them to keep ringing their doorbell, banging on their windows, running around their house. They just sound like lazy arseholes to me. And it's a shame you can't do nothing about your fence because that might cure a lot of the problem, but who knows with these guys as well. Away says not the arsehole. The parents are lazy and sound like they just want to make you a free babysitter. Boys will be boys. Shake my head. Miranda says, not the arsehole. These parents are jerks. Be petty and install a motion sensor that sets off a sprinkler system. Opie says I'd love to, but I've been turning part of my driveway and front yard into a vegetable garden, meaning I'll be there quite often in the next few months and don't want to get soaking wet myself every single time. Now, I love the idea of a vegetable garden. Had one myself a little while back, don't anymore, but the thought of you having a vegetable garden with those kids running around, it sounds like they'd be picking your produce before you. There's actually a hilarious little saga that was going on the channel with another neighbor who did set off a sprinkler system with a Mrs. Bouquet type person who kept coming into their garden and then getting wet because the sprinkler was going off. Really good. Master Manipulation says not the arsehole, but the better idea would be to call the non-emergency number for the police and ask an officer to come down and talk to the kids and the parents. Plus issue them a warning. Sometimes you need a figure of authority to explain things in order to have your needs met. OP says, the non-emergency number here is terrible. I used to live next to a drug user / dealer. Me and pretty much the entire street called him about 100 times the few months I lived there because of dealing. Parties in the middle of the night, harassment, and a whole lot of other crap. The police came like 5 times and all we got was, we need to catch them in the act, otherwise we can't do anything. I love our police, but they need to man up a bit. And one more comment from Easily Distracted who says not the arsehole. I actually had to do this at a rental house we lived in for a while. We had 2 big dogs of our own, 60 and 70 pound mixed breeds, and we're keeping my sister's 90 pound Rottie while her husband was in the hospital, and a 3-year-old neighbour child loved to come over and play with them. I was okay with it when we were around to supervise, but one day I looked out my window after letting the dogs out in the fence yard, and found the little girl had figured out how to get over the fence and was playing in the yard with them. I took her home, told the mother that I was concerned that she could get hurt, and the mother told me that wasn't her problem. So I planted raspberry brambles along the fence line to keep her out. Fortunately, my landlord was very sympathetic and gifted me the raspberry shoots from her own yard. So then OP does update the post and says about a week after my post I planted a wall of blackberries and raspberries at the 2 sides of my garden facing the driveway, about 30 centimeters from the edge, so no overhanging branches. On the other side of the berry wall I planted lots of stuff like strawberries and tomatoes. To reach the tomatoes and strawberries from the driveway you have to either go through the fruit bushes or walk up to my house, walk about 2 meters along the side of the house and my windows and then walk into my actual garden. Not something you do by mistake. For about 2 weeks it was somewhat quiet, but I still found the kids on my driveway every single day. As far as I know they did not enter the garden and I hadn't noticed them walking around my house anymore, so I figured the bushes were working. About 1 week ago, berry season started and my bushes are now full of raspberries and there's lots of strawberries as well. The neighbours noticed. First I caught the boys picking and eating raspberries, so I told them off and dropped them off at home. Told their mum I caught them stealing. That's how I see it even though it's fruit, and that I'd call the cops next time. She huffed and told me to grow up, but took the boys inside anyway. After that, it was quiet until yesterday afternoon. While I went out for a while and found the dad and his two sons right in the middle of my garden when I returned, clearing my bushes and plants, I didn't even confront them. Just called the cops from a distance as they hadn't noticed me yet and started filming them after making the call. Luckily, 2 cops showed up after 10 minutes or so, and they confronted the neighbor as they were still picking berries. They told them that they were trespassing and that the berry picking was in fact considered stealing and that I could press charges. For the first time, I noticed a bit of fear in my neighbor. He was having trouble finding his words and kept looking back at his house. I guess hoping his wife would show up to yell at the cops. They all went inside with the cops, so I just went home as well. After a while, the cops came by and asked me if I wanted to press charges. I asked them if they felt like they scared the neighbor enough to stay away. And I got a small smile and yes about him, but the wife had just kept shouting at them and her husband about the little bitch living next door. I told them no for now. Asked them if I'd be allowed to get an extra camera set up on the wall between my garden and the road to cover the entire front garden plus driveway. They said that's allowed as long as it's on my side of the wall. So now I'm getting an extra camera installed. One neighbor knows I'm done messing around, but his wife isn't there yet, and if I ever catch them again, the cops will be called and possible charges will follow. The absolute entitlement of people within this story. Entitlement we see all over the channel, to be quite honest. OP brought those kids back because they were picking berries from those bushes, and the mum told OP to grow up, and then the dad and the kids go across and start picking the berries, clearing the bushes of the berries. That's just wild. And one of those situations where I'd love to know what is going through the entitled people's heads in that moment. Do they just not give a shit? Is there something else going on? I just find the behavior fascinating in some ways. Not in a good way, but just to see what was happening in that head. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from the Am I the Arsehole subreddit. Doesn't have an update from Weird Outside 577, who says, am I the arsehole for causing family drama over a swimming pool? So I know from the experience that Reddit isn't the most understanding towards parents of young kids, but I really just want a third-party opinion because the situation is driving me crazy, and my family are saying I need to get over it. I, female 30s, live with my partner and our 2 kids, ages 7 and 3. My older sister, Ava, also female 30s, and her husband recently purchased a house in the local area. It's a super nice place with a big yard and, as you can probably guess from the title, a swimming pool. Ava recently hosted a barbecue at her place. It wasn't a huge event. She invited me, our parents, and our other siblings. She mentioned letting the kids play in the pool, so I only assumed my kids would get to be included. We are potty training, although my youngest is still in diapers at the moment. At the barbecue, I was getting my youngest ready for the pool by changing him into a swim diaper. Ava pulled me aside and told me she doesn't think it's hygienic for my youngest to play in the pool, since swim diapers don't hold pee, and she asked that he doesn't swim in the pool with the other kids playing in it. I didn't think this was fair and told Ava that lots of people, adults and kids, pee in the pool and it would be no different at a public pool, so what's the problem? She was being really condescending and wouldn't listen to me at all, and said that he can play in the pool when he's toilet trained, and said that's not fair on the other kids. At this point, my son was crying because he wanted to swim in the pool, and I told Ava she was being cold, but it's her house and her pool, so do what you want. Ava accused me of trying to guilt trip her and told me to just drop it. I was getting upset myself at this point, and I told our parents and our other siblings what Ava did. They told me it's not a big deal and that it's not worth arguing with her over, and try not to let it bother me. I wasn't happy with this because this essentially means they're siding with her and downplaying how she treated me and my son. I left the barbecue early with my family because we didn't feel welcome after that. The next day, Ava messaged me a whole paragraph and said that she's sorry that I'm upset and that she wasn't trying to exclude my son for the sake of it. It was a super non-apology, and I told her I don't want to hear it and that she's damaged her relationship with her nephew, and she's not the one who had to deal with him being upset. Ava snapped at me out of nowhere and said I'm being dramatic. I told her to grow up and said that I have a very valid reason to be mad, and she needs to stop acting like a teenager. Ava showed these messages to everyone, and everything's just a bit up in the air. I feel like I'm right here, but the rest of my family doesn't seem to agree. I'm going to start in the comments with Maker Blue, who says everyone sucks here. She really should have let you know beforehand that only potty trained kids were allowed in the pool. Of course your kids were going to want to swim, and of course you didn't think it would be an issue. She should have given you a heads up so you could have prepared. Even not knowing this in advance, it's still her pool and you shouldn't have escalated it the way you did. A bunch of character says, how the fuck are people voting not the arsehole here? You're the arsehole 100%. First and foremost, it's not your pool. It's Ava's, and it's totally reasonable for her to not want your kids to piss in it. Immediate Refuse says, you're the arsehole. I get your point about the pool and about kids peeing in the pool without a diaper. However, your sister has every right to draw that line. And even if the swim diaper holds the poop, the kid still might poop in the pool. Ultimately, you're continuing to escalate the situation. You can explain to your son that the pool is for potty-trained kids. You need to accept that your sister doesn't want kids who aren't potty-trained in her pool, which is absolutely okay. And you need to get over it instead of holding on to it. Griffin says, you're the arsehole. Pissing in pools is gross. It's gross when it's in public pool. It's gross when it's in a private pool. All the people that say, but there are chemicals to clean it. Piss in a cup, then ask how much chemicals needed to be added to the cup before they would dump that glass of piss on their head. It's just fucking gross. She wanted to keep her pool clean of your little piss machine. Frankly, after you made your thoughts on it known, I wouldn't have let your other kid in the pool either. My pool isn't for pissers. Oh, I'm such a child. Mr. Set says, I am flabbergasted by these comments. Imagine inviting a 3-year-old to a pool party and telling him he can't swim. He can watch the other kids. What the fuck? If I knew one of my children wouldn't be allowed to swim, I never would have brought them to a pool party. He should have told you that in advance and let you choose to go or not bring it up after the kid has a swimsuit on and is ready to swim. Very much not the arsehole, and anyone who votes differently clearly does not have children. Marketing Artistic says, I'm going against the majority and saying everyone sucks here. Yes, it's her pool, her rules. I fully agree there. However, Ava did tell OP that the kids would be able to play in the pool. She never said she meant only potty-trained kids. This really comes down to lack of communication on everybody's end. OP could have handled the situation by trying to find a compromise instead of getting angry. Could the 3-year-old have sat on the pool steps and splashed around without fully going in the water? And I'm going to tell you, OP was voted the a-hole in this situation, but there was a lot of mixed comments, not the arseholes, everyone sucks here, you're the arseholes as well. How do you feel about this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you as always for being involved. It's absolutely incredible. And hopefully I will see you in the next one. A cheeky so-and-so. Much love.